How does the EU protect consumers? What new challenges does it face? These and other questions will be answered by the series Looking Back, Looking Ahead on the occasion of the informal video conference of EU Ministers for Consumer Protection on December 7th. Regardless of whether it's a string of lights or a washing machine, when a European buys a product in another EU country, they can be sure that this product meets a number of safety requirements that are applicable in an EU country. Policy, and that there will be compensation for technical defects. Today, consumers in the EU have a large number of rights that are bundled in the consumer protection policy of the European Union. This policy is closely linked to the extension, or not the existence, of the European internal market and is based on a simple idea. Just like the products that are moved from one country to another thanks to the internal market, consumer law must also be cross-border. Consumers who buy products or obtain services and digital content from another European country must be protected and have the same rights vis-à-vis the retailers. But such a goal was not envisaged in the EU founding treaties of 1957. At that time, consumers were not perceived as individuals whose rights had to be defended. In particular, they were seen as indirect beneficiaries of the internal market, benefiting, for example, from price reductions and the wider choice that resulted from the free movement of goods. The establishment of the European Bureau of Consumer Associations, the BEUC, in Brussels in 1962 was an important first step towards a change in mentality and the development of a European consumer policy. Since its founding, the BEUC, which now has 44 consumer organizations from 32 European countries, has advised the European Commission and represents the interests of consumers vis-à-vis the European Union. At the Paris EU Summit in 1972, the heads of state and government first spoke about the need to introduce a policy in favor of consumers. The Commission then presented a program of action which listed a number of rights, including the right to health and safety protection and the right to protect the economic interests of consumers. But it was not until the Maastricht Treaty, which came into force in 1993, that consumer policy was included in the treaties and thus declared a genuine community policy. In 1997, its scope was clarified in the Amsterdam Treaty, which set the objectives as follows. In order to promote the interest of consumers and to ensure a high level of consumers' protection, the community contributes to the protection of the health, safety and economic interests of consumers, as well as to promoting their right to information, education and the formation of associations to protect of their interests. In addition, the treaty stipulated that the interests of consumers must be taken into account when defining and implementing all other community policies, be it transport policy or agricultural policy. That's the so-called horizontal dimension. Consumer policy has an increasingly extensive legal framework and is also based on 5-year action plans known as the Consumer Agenda. In May 2012, the Commission presented its EU Consumer Agenda, in which it set out its strategic approach to consumer protection for the years to come. On November 13th, they presented her new Consumer Agenda for the period after or from 2020 to 2025. At the side of the European Parliament, European associations and the Member States, the Commission sees itself as a driving force for strengthening consumer rights. One focus of the EU's work in favor of consumers is to protect their economic interests. For example, the Union prohibits unfair commercial practices in business-to-consumer business, such as aggressive sales methods or misleading advertising. And another rights are, every European who has bought a product or service on the internet has a right of withdrawal. He can cancel his purchase for 14 days. One of the best known measures is the abolition of roaming charges. Since the summer of 2017, Europeans have stopped paying additional fees when they make calls, send text messages or use the mobile internet while traveling within the European Union. The Union also strengthened the rights of passengers. In the event of cancellation, late arrivals or denied boardings, for example overbooking of the flight, they are entitled to reimbursement or rerouting and, if applicable, for compensation. These rights apply to flights operated by a Union air carrier and to flights departing from an airport in the EU member state, the United Kingdom, Norway, Iceland or Switzerland. At December 31st, the United Kingdom will be out of that, by the way. Today, the consumer protection policy of the European Union is facing new challenges. It has to face the effects of climate change, digitization and now also the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the governments of all EU member states have had the difficult task of reconciling consumer and business interests. In the aviation sector, it's particularly important to find a balance between the interests of the airlines, whose existence is threatened by the collapse of the air transport market caused by the pandemic, and the passengers who wish to have their prepaid ticket reimbursed in the event of a flight cancellation caused by the pandemic. In digitization, the liability regime for digital platforms poses another major challenge. How can you ensure that the products offered by these platforms really meet EU standards? And when it comes to climate change, the question arises of how the lifespan of products can be extended. Should companies be obliged to offer repairable products? In view of these challenges, Germany set itself various priorities during its Council presidency. First of all, the EU Commission is to be supported in drawing up the new consumer agenda. In the areas of digitization, Germany wants consumers to have more rights to software updates. It is also intended to work to improve relations between the EU and third countries in order to make digital platforms that, for example, sell cosmetics in Europe, comply with European standards. Together with its partners in the EU, Germany would like to campaign for greater user-friendliness of technology products. This aspect should already be taken into account when developing a product in order to simplify its use. Germany works closely with Portugal and Slovenia. The three countries together form the trio presidency. On October 16th, the Joint Declaration on Consumer Protection in Europe, Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic, was signed. All of these topics will be on the agenda for the future and were on the agenda of the informal video conference of EU Ministers for Consumer Protection that took place on December 7th in Berlin. If you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel, visit my other channels. I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.